Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ask the Once and Future Nerd for Book 2, Chapter 7. I'm Zach. I'm here with Christian. Hi, Christian.
Hey, guys.
And we might be having another one or two guests joining at some point, but for now, it's the two of us flying solo, and we're here to discuss Chapter 7. Christian, how are you doing today?
All right. How are you doing?
Doing well. Excited to talk about this chapter, our first chapter back after our unfortunately long break, but
Yeah.
we're happy to be here. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about this chapter. Do you wanna set us up a little bit about tell us about the chapter a bit? Tell us your thoughts on it.
Yeah, like kind of a recap?
Yeah, go for that.
Yeah, so we ended the last chapter, chapter 6, with the party having seemingly rescued Nia's parents from Relotate and her lieutenants, and the last three members of the party, which were Brennan, Regan, and Jen, about to make their getaway. Regan makes a last-minute unilateral decision to go back and try to kill Relotate. It doesn't go well. She is badly injured. Jen saves her at the last minute, and as a result of all of this, they are not able to deliver Ren what they had promised in exchange for getaway and safe passage to the Sugarcane Isles, and so they are then forced to make a choice about, because only 4 people can now be smuggled into the Sugarcane Isles, and a lot of the chapter is devoted to making the choice of who that's going to be, and to kind of dealing with the aftermath of Regan kind of screwed the pooch on this one, made a unilateral decision that did not go well and messed everybody else up. We have the return of the, of course, very much alive Antonin Mooncrest, who returns to the Castle Guernatal suspiciously quickly for someone who had been recovering from very bad injuries far away, allegedly, and was totally not a phantom stalking around the castle the whole time. And we also had some further developments of First Snow and Steady River, of them going to go ask the Federation for help with the elf encroachment on their territory. I think that's all of the extra plots. I might be forgetting something. My brain is actually on chapter 9 right now, so I might have missed something. Zach, did I forget anything important?
No, I think those are the big points, and I want to talk a little bit about the Antonin stuff a little later, and a little bit about the First Snow stuff in a moment as well. But let's talk about the main plot first.
Sure.
I think it was a really interesting chapter in that we've had a lot of go-go action for a few chapters in a row previously, and this chapter was really not as action-driven. We had a cool action scene at the beginning of episode 1 getting into the boat, but after that it was really almost like a character growth chapter in a way.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, as you mentioned, it really was a decision that Regan made. Spoiler alerts, by the way. I usually mention this at the beginning of the Q&A episodes. Anyone new to the Once and Future Nerd, if this is the first episode you're listening to, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Now please pause this episode, go back, listen, because we're going to be discussing the plot pretty heavily. Retroactive spoiler alerts to that summary Christian just gave, but yeah.
Right.
But so it really is this decision that Regan makes unilaterally, that they had sort of escaped. They had done their plan. They executed it fairly well, and then Regan decides that it wasn't what she wanted, so she tries to go back on her own, nearly gets herself killed. Everyone goes to rescue her, nearly gets everyone else killed, and then a lot of the rest of this chapter is really just kind of Regan sitting in that, right? Like she, you know, for once she can't just move on to the next challenge. She has to, you know, she's injured, she's stuck on a boat. She has no choice but to sort of sit there and sort of soak in that feeling.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's a lot of sitting with discomfort in this one.
Mm-hmm. Sitting with discomfort with Regan, but also I think a little bit with Nia and her parents as well.
Totally.
That was another interesting change in the plot, that for the first time we really got to see Nia interacting with her parents in a way that she hasn't before. And again, spoilers towards the end of the chapter, it was much more brief of an interaction than they would have liked. And I think it's interesting to see when the characters don't know that their interaction is going to be that brief, right? Like,
right.
Just seeing how they would interact in this first, after their first meeting after a long time, where there's still sort of these old tensions and these old frustrations occurring.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because now thinking back, we certainly didn't plan this ahead, but it ended up being a really convenient chapter to have a new Nia. And like we recast Nia for non-plot, reasons. And of course, I think anytime you recast, there's going to be kind of, the character is going to change a little. Like, I don't think it's realistic or fair to expect two actors to play a character the same way. And so I think it's kind of is a lucky break that we get to see Nia in a new context that we haven't seen her before, as the chapter where we have a new actor, because it's kind of like it allows that actor to put their own mark on the character without like, oh, this character just changed for no reason, and Regina Renee Russell, who's doing a great job with Nia, had, she's doing a lot more of this kind of like dialect code switching than we've done before. Like, she really leaned into that aspect of the character, and I think it makes a lot of sense that we're now seeing Nia interact with her parents for long periods for the first time. So that was cool, I think.
Yeah, definitely cool. And speaking of that, the sort of getting that change in Nia's character, obviously with the actor as well, we also had in this chapter the arguments about who leaves to go to the Isles. And I think it's interesting to discuss that a little bit, and to reveal behind the curtain a little bit that a lot of those debates that the characters were having were kind of debates that we were having as well. We didn't go into it knowing exactly how that was going to end up. That was sort of as the characters were arguing, it kind of was the arguments that we were having in our writer's room, trying to decide how that should play out.
Yeah, that's a long scene, and I mean, it's like almost a whole episode of just talking, that scene with like 12 characters or something. And if I remember correctly, because God, this was like literally years ago that we were first writing this chapter, but I think there are several drafts where that goes different ways, and it was a matter of like looking at those drafts and seeing which one felt right and made the most sense to us. We did not go in knowing.
It does also bring up that quote from Pat Rothfuss that I always like bringing up, because I find it was particularly informative in this case, where Pat Rothfuss shows some disdain for writers who just say, oh, I write what the characters would do in the situation, where he says, no, that's not, as a writer, you're crafting the story actively. And it's not just enough to do what the characters would do. It would be to make the story how the story needs to go and justify it in a way that it makes sense for the characters to have done that. And I feel like that's something we struggled with a lot in executing this chapter, in making sure not just what makes sense for the characters who goes where, but what makes sense for continuing our story in who will go where, in a way that, we can justify. Is it reasonable that these characters would make these choices that we need them to make for plot purposes?
Yeah, and I mean, it's always tough to kind of, because I'm very much like, I always try to leave open the possibility that the characters will do something that surprises me or that I wasn't planning, and to like follow what I think is believable. But then sometimes, like, if you realize that the result of that is that you've broken your plot in some way, then you need to go back and engineer a way for it to not be like that. But that was a really challenging scene to write, because it's like, again, I think it's, what would it be? It would be not 11 characters in that scene, who all have their own motivations and character traits, and two of those characters we don't know nearly as well as the other nine. So like, keeping track of all of that and like staying fair and true to those characters in that argument was one of the hardest things I ever wrote. I think, and it's funny because I was just listening to our friends at No Bad Ideas, their most recent episode. They were talking to Melissa Tandon about fandom, and about how, as they've done more fiction writing, they've become more forgiving of other fiction creators. And, you know, there's the old complaint about, like, if you've got all these characters with information, like, you could solve the problem if they just talked to each other. And then realizing as a writer, it's like, yeah, but that scene sucks, because it's like you're just conveying information that the audience already knows. And that was, and as I was listening to this, I was like, yeah, that was about 15 minutes of our show was kind of that. And it's like, yeah, that's why it's hard, like, to keep it interesting and moving with information that the audience already knows. But I don't think we could have just like dotted over that decision. You know, it's such a monumental decision that I think we had to see the characters like wrestling with it.
I agree with that. And if anyone, so we have a live YouTube stream going on for those who don't know. So if anyone in the comments wants to chime in, whether, you know, how you felt about actually seeing that decision being made, please feel free to chime in. And thank you to everyone catching on YouTube. If you're listening on audio later on, we do live stream the Q&A at the end of each chapter, so come join us for next chapter. I do want to say, to be fair to us, though, you're right that, you know, if it's just, you know, pure rehashing of what the audience already knows, that could get boring. But in our case, I don't think, to defend ourselves a little bit, I don't think that the audience necessarily knew, you know, they knew sort of each individual character's motivations, but I wouldn't say that they knew the discussion, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't necessarily know how the characters would interact with each other.
Yeah, and I think that, to me at least, that's why that scene was still interesting, because everyone has their own ideas, but it's what happens when those ideas are confronted with opposing ideas that makes the scene interesting.
Sure.
YouTube chat pointing out how many characters we're keeping track of at once.
It's not easy.
Yeah, but we really, like, you know, we wrote ourselves into this position, but it's a cool position to be in, because I think it's really interesting to see all these different viewpoints happening. Yeah.
Chad is saying straight up forgot about the elven medicine that Gwen had. Yes, super so did we. And we kind of tried to like hang a lampshade on it with the narration there, but 100% we forgot about that. We're like, oh shit, we should say something about this probably. But yeah. Okay, is that I think that's a good recap, sum up. Is that a good excuse to get into some of the submitted questions?
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to transition us real quick as well about the many characters and forgetting what's going on. You mentioned briefly about Antonin Mooncrest somewhat suddenly returning back to the scene where he had previously left and no one really questioning it. And just to admit it for a moment, we may have slightly lost track of time and how surprising it may or should have been that he returned when he did. But
yeah, I think we had definitely made some plans based around like he fully faked his death, and everyone was supposed to think that he was dead. And nobody, granted, the head priest could forget that, but like nobody else seems to be reacting to the fact that he's not dead. So we may have written ourselves into a little bit of an oopsie there.
That's okay. Just in the YouTube chat, it was asked if there were any other alignments of how the parties could have split, and the answer is absolutely.
Oh yeah.
One of the big questions we had, if it's okay for me to spill this, Christian, but one of the biggest questions was, where is the baby going?
Yeah.
And this was probably 80% of our argument revolved around where is the baby going, and if the baby's going that way, who has to go as well. So we ended up splitting the baby from Gwen and Arlene, and that was a very difficult split for them emotionally, but in a way for us emotionally as well. But so we had looked at all the different permutations. If the baby goes west, do Gwen and Arlene need to go west as well? If Gwen and Arlene are leaving, does the baby also need to leave? Is there a possibility that Nia would stay with her parents? That was another big, emotional split that was a difficult decision to reach. So to answer your question, there were many different permutations that we went through before we landed on the final choice that you all heard about. And with that, yeah, let's take that as a chance to transition into some of the questions we got on.
And actually, I've just gotten a message. I think Garrett Armin might be joining us in a moment. Garrett plays Brennan. I think our first question is a Brennan question. So this would be great if Garrett were going to join us. I guess I'll take that excuse to say one more thing about splitting the party, is that it definitely occurred to us that, I think if you try chasing what you think the audience wants all the time, you'll end up satisfying nobody. But that said, we do care. What our audience loves and gets excited about is really useful feedback for us, and all of which is to say, once we realized that it made the most plot sense for Arlene and Gwen to leave the main plot, then it kind of became figuring out okay, but we don't want their story to be over. So how do we keep them involved in the story if we do this? And there's I don't want to spoil or commit to anything, but suffice it to say, we thought about that a lot and have some plans for that.
Yeah, we were very concerned about how the audience might take them leaving, and we also, they're wonderful characters. We did not want to lose them either, so we will do everything in our power to say that this story, their story, is not yet concluded.
All right, so I've got Garrett in the clean feed. Is he trying to join the Google Meet?
I haven't seen
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
We can. You're echoey. Let's see. Why do I hear you twice? Oh, I know why. Nobody else hears you twice, just me. Okay, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay,
hey, Garrett,
great.
how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm so sorry that I'm late. I just totally forgot, and I'm very, very sorry.
We're very glad you are here now. Are you going to join us on video, or are you going to be...
If you want, I'm happy to join on video.
Okay, terrific. Do you have the Google Meet link?
I'm sure I do. Hold on 1 second.
To everyone watching live, just please give us half a moment while we get everything all set up. Awesome. And this is going to mess up the screen capture, so give me a moment. Christian, can you lead things for a moment while I get the video proper?
Yeah. I'm mostly interested in watching how nuts the Google window looks now on the. But anyway, welcome, Garrett. We are glad you're here. I guess before we jump into the specific user questions listener questions that we have, I guess, did you have any overall thoughts you wanted to share about Chapter 7? We recorded it a while ago, but it was our first chapter back from a long break, and it was our first chapter recording remotely.
Yeah, I should probably refresh my memory, or should have already.
All right, I'll give you a quick. Before you do that, can you mute yourself in Google Meet?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great.
Done.
Okay, terrific. So yeah, this is the one at the start of the chapter. They had just rescued Nia's parents, and then Regan goes back to try to kill Relotiet, but it falls apart, and everyone needs to go save Regan. They screw up the money that they owe Ren, and then as a result, only 4 people can go to the Sugarcane Isles, and they have to decide who that's going to be. And the chapter ends with the party splitting, with Gwen and Arlene and Nia's parents going to the Isles, and the rest of the party going to travel west across the mountains.
Yes, I am looking over it now, and now I'm remembering all of the grunting and groaning that I had been doing.
Yes.
Yes. And there were serious injuries.
Yeah, there were some pretty gruesome injuries.
Yes.
Well, what about, let's start with what are your reactions to recording remotely for the first time? Oop, I think I've muted you by accident. I'm not hearing you. Uh-oh.
I can turn back on the Google Meet.
There we go. Oh, no, wait.
This is Google Meet.
Okay, all right.
Test. Can you hear me now? Test.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. I was just saying it's not as fun, obviously, as being in the studio together. I miss the, playing with everyone in person. But I think we've made the most of it and done a good job. I'm impressed with you guys that you've had the fortitude and been able to keep going, been able to keep up with everything and keep writing. And I've lost all of my motivation over the pandemic. I don't know about you guys, but I am completely unmotivated to do anything, let alone sit here and write for the love of writing. So I'm impressed that you guys are still pumping out content, and I'm glad that we kept it up, even though we couldn't be together in person. Hopefully we will be soon.
Yeah, I'm very excited that we're back, recording, getting to see you all. Even if it's online, it's better than, the years of not seeing you all, so.
Absolutely better than nothing, for sure. And keep telling the story.
Yeah. So let's dive right into a question we received off of Tumblr from the user Skinny Hiker, who asked, after the last episode, how many throwing axes does Brennan have left? So Brennan seems to have a never-ending supply of throwing axes, doesn't he?
Maybe he... Go ahead.
I was going to say, in the past, I assume he retrieved at least some of them, but it's a good question. I need to, actually... Yeah, I don't have the answer off the top of my head. Maybe I can go look at stuff while you guys talk.
How many axes can you fit inside of a bag o' axe? Probably he retrieved most of them. I would assume that most people on the retrieving end of one of Brennan's axes were not able to make it too far. So
yeah,
that's probably true.
I think we said canonically at some point he started with a dozen. I think that's right. And he gave, how many did he give? Because at the end of the chapter, he gifts a few to Arlene and Gwen. So
that's right. That was a very solemn gift.
Yeah. Let's see.
YouTube chat thinks it was a very sweet moment. They're discussing right now how, it was really for Brennan a very like sort of like the broadest gesture of emotion he's shown in a while.
Yeah.
He was giving his heart when he gave his axe.
Do you think, Garrett, that he may have had names for the axes he gave? I don't think we've discussed his axes having names, but we know that Regan names her swords.
Right, and swords are commonly named, right? But I don't know about axes.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. It's a good question, like how disposable the throwing axes are considered. Chat points out, and reading the script points out that Brennan gifts 4 axes at the end of the chapter. I'm going to assume there's been some attrition over the course of our plot, so let's say he has somewhere between 6 and 8 throwing axes left.
That sounds reasonable.
I think that's
sounds
probably
good.
Yeah.
The YouTube chat is also discussing whether either carrier pigeons or bungee cords return the axes.
Bungee cords.
I think that would be pretty hilarious visual. An axe on a cord.
A boomerang axe.
Yeah.
That would be pretty awesome.
That would be cool. It's a good idea.
I mean, but no, because because once it hits something, it does still stay there, basically the same way that it would if it wasn't attached to any. I don't know what the cord buys you. I guess if you miss, like if you totally whiff it.
I mean, I guess you could pull it back.
Oh, you know what though? He takes out a few elves in the fight in chapter 6, and he probably doesn't have time to retrieve all of those. I'm amending my answer to between 3 and 5.
Ooh.
So he's kind of running low at this point.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah,
But
definitely.
doesn't he stock up whenever they hit a town?
That's probably true.
Yeah, he might have stocked up in Armstrongard, but it's been. I mean, yeah, they haven't been in a town since before the fair, or the horse race, or whatever it was.
But there must be a smithy in most of the
Yeah.
places where their provisions are stocked.
Yeah. This is probably not... This is technically a spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler. They hit a town at the start of Chapter 8. So we're just going to say that Brennan stopped off and got some axes made, and we're back up to 12. It's like a long rest.
Or sharpened, or
Something.
whatever needed to be happened.
Yeah.
It's kind of like going to the bathroom. It's not in the script, but it just has to
assume
happen.
it
It's
Exactly.
Brennan's bathroom.
Brennan's bathroom is the name of the axe shop he frequents the most often.
Yeah.
The off-screen smithy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Garrett, if you turn down your headphones just a little bit, are you still able
Yeah.
to hear us? I'm just getting a little bleed.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I apologize for that. I
No
don't have
worries.
closed cans. These are open cans
I
for
also
my music
have-
listening pleasure. Yes.
I also have open... I should get closed cans. But...
Yes, so should I. I'm too selfish. Obviously.
The chat is discussing if carrier pigeons were used to retrieve the axes and then just get confused and bring them to Davod instead. And just shows up at Davod's doorstep with a pile of axes.
Are they European or African carrier pigeons?
Yeah. Everybody wants Dave to come back. I also want Dave to come back. I will confess, Dave almost came back. We're to part the kimono. We're finishing up like a first draft of chapter 9 right now. Dave almost came back in chapter 9, but it ended up being too jam packed to add another plot point. So I'm not foreclosed on Dave coming back. I have some ideas about what he can do, but he is not confirmed back yet.
And to follow up on that, we actually had a question on Reddit from user Wooden Suit. Will we get more of Renault, McGuire, and the Annihilator? Speaking of characters who are quite entertaining and
Yes.
not in the main plot, the short answer to that is yes.
Yes. Wait for chapter 8. I think they might be in the first. They might be in the first episode of chapter 8. Let me double check that. Yeah. So just sit tight until, what is it, June 26th?
That sounds correct.
You'll get your Renault and Maguire and the Annihilator.
Awesome. We'll go to another question from Tumblr that was asking about the orc settlements and the size of Jordan. So, compared to Earth continents, how big is Jordan, and will it still be a while before First Snow meets the gang? Size-wise, that's a question that we've kind of hand-waved over a little bit.
Yes.
I'd say, roughly ballparking it, closer to Europe size than to North America sized.
Yeah, so here's what I know for sure. I know that there is more continent to the west of the mountains than there is to the east of the mountains, because the continent to the east of the mountains is limited on both sides by the ocean and the mountains, and we know it's like a week or so's ride from the ocean to the mountains, so we know about how big that is. And on the other side of the mountain, we haven't thus limited ourselves, so on the west of the mountains is as big as the story needs it to be. And then north and south, we know that it is just big enough that you can have a like tundra in the south and tropics in the north.
Yes. And to answer the second half of the question about how long will it be before First Snow meets the gang, I'll say, don't want to give any spoils, but it would be pretty poor storytelling if it never occurred. So fair to say that will happen at some point.
Yeah. Is that a good point, actually? We're not going to take a break now, but for the podcast version of this, we will take a break for some ads. So I'm going to say that now, and then we'll be back. You know what? Let's preview the next question, and then we'll be back for the next question after a break.
So the next question we got are, what are the party's favorite colors, and why do they like those questions? Sorry, why do they like those colors?
Okay, great. So we're going to come back to that after this break. Okay.
I totally bungled that read in the break.
It's fine. I'm gonna. Don't worry. I'm gonna bungle the ad when we get to that too. So, it's fine. This will continue to be a podcast that's only kind of half-heartedly for profit.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite colors, huh?
I think that Billy, at least at the start of things, was probably the type of person who unironically liked his football team's colors because he was so into his football team that he thought they were the best colors.
Yeah, which I believe we've established are
Red
crimson and gold.
Yeah.
I
feel like Jen would be the exact opposite.
Yeah. We know Brennan likes blue and gold, because those are Guernital colors.
Right, for kind of the same reason.
It's now my brain is spinning, because I'm really thinking, like, were favorite colors a thing in a pre-modern society? They may have been more so, because certain dyes were, like, really, really hard to come by.
That's true.
Like, blue is a color of so many, like, royal houses and royal families, because in Europe, at least for a long time, like, blues and purples were very, like, things that could dye stuff blue and purple were very hard to come by.
But on the flip side, our magic system would certainly allow for color-changing magic to occur.
True. But it's kind of a chicken and egg, right? Because you have to know the color to think, oh, that would look good in that. You know what I mean? Like,
that is true.
Like, there's that famous bit of the Odyssey where the wine dark sea, and everybody's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, that's not the color that water is. But some people who study ancient Greek think there wasn't a word for blue in ancient Greek, and so because they didn't have that word, it's just like, oh yeah, the ocean's the color of wine.
Interesting.
Or they had blue grapes and we don't have them anymore.
That's also possible. I thought this was going to be a real silly softball question, and it's kind of not.
It's the hardest question ever.
Yeah.
I was definitely going to say red for Brennan, no question.
You think?
Because
Because he's a murderer?
Yeah, just because he enjoys blood.
Does he enjoy Blade? Wow. Yeah, he might. Shit, he might.
I think you have to be that good at something.
Yeah. I think that, this is sweet. I think that Arlene, like, red, there's some, like, the red more colors are some sort of, like, crimson. And I think Arlene, obviously, for a long time hated crimson because she hated anything to do with her family, but then Gwen wore a lot of crimson just because that's where she was working, and so recently Arlene has come back around to loving crimson, but kind of only when Gwen wears it.
That's nice.
Yeah. What would Regan even? How would she even respond to being asked, "What is your favorite color?"
That's a good question. Like,
I mean, it's like keep asking and find out why it's red, or something like that. I would be so scared to even ask her.
either that or like what do you mean favorite color? Color doesn't do anything for me. It's not stealing me money or killing me anyone, so why do I care?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it's like, I think Regan is closed off. Yeah, like this. Not to make it too heavy again, but like I think Regan is closed off to her own humanity in a lot of ways. And it reminds me of that. Like, there's that really nice scene between Brennan and Regan in this chapter where she's maybe starting to have the insight of like, am I blaming myself for things that aren't my fault? Or, like, is my brain fucked up? Like, like she's starting to have that, that kind of insight. And, asking Brennan, like, did you blame yourself? Like, do you think it should have been you who died instead of your dad? And Brennan, like, without even thinking twice about it, is like, yeah, of course. All right, what's now moving on to the next question?
Can I go to sleep now?
Yeah, yeah, and that being a moment for Regan to be like, wow, okay, I don't want to be like that. So maybe the color question is a good jumping off point to ask you, Garrett, your reactions to that scene.
I always feel like he's sort of not the straight man for her, but he's like her sounding board, right? So it's always like, you're the queen.
Yeah.
All I can do is listen. I'm not exactly gonna, make the decision here, but I'll tell you what I think. I'm not gonna lie to you. So she's, he's definitely the one who she bounces stuff off of to see, because he's not a yes man.
Right.
He's always gonna say what he thinks about stuff, but
yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting. That's a good point. Like, he's super loyal, but he's not a yes man, and I think that's an interesting distinction.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he's doing it for her, but not really for her, right? It's for the greater good, because he believes that she's the one.
Yeah.
So that's what he has to do. It's not even a question for him.
Yeah.
He doesn't have very many moral, like, conundrums. I feel like it's rare when he doesn't know which side of the fence he's on.
Yeah.
And
for him,
I took that scene maybe a slightly different way than what you were just saying about how, the fact that without a pause he says, yes, of course, they think about it every day. I saw it more as like Regan realizing that she's not the only one that struggles with things. Like a moment of, like, it never occurred to her that other people would feel the same sort of pain that she feels. And,
right, or be able to hide it,
mm-hmm.
or that he could feel that even,
mm-hmm.
or someone else.
Yeah, as we said before, he doesn't show that level of pain openly that often. So I think so many ways that scene like could be seen. I think. The YouTube chat, by the way, very very complimentary of your performance in that scene. So as always, great job.
Yeah. I think that was a hard scene for you guys to have to do, remote for the first time, but you and Anya both knocked it out of the park, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, it's good stuff.
Chat says, yeah, like, Jen's out here feeling all this pain about eating cheesy bread at 2 in the morning really makes you think.
Hard to argue with that.
Yeah.
Back to colors. Do we think... I feel like Yelloween would like the opalescent, like, shimmery elf color. But that might be a gimme, though. That might be an easy one.
Yeah.
Green.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, he sure does wear a lot of green.
Red Ren, I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Who can say? Who can say?
Really no way of knowing. Speaking of which, I'm going to take this opportunity for a moment to shout out, speaking of Red Ren, we have our exclusive artwork for the chapter, as always, made by our fantastic artist, John Flanagan. Yeah.
When you switch to the artwork, our audio goes out too.
Oh, no, my bad.
So let's go ahead.
Yeah, I just swapped back.
Okay.
So, we should be back now as it switches over. Yeah, we should be back now.
Okay. Oops-a-daisy.
I forgot that the audio was tied to the scene with our video in it, so
Yeah.
that was my mistake.
Well, as chat said, the artwork was too exclusive.
Yeah, wouldn't even allow us to speak over it.
Yeah. Hey, so chat, now is actually, if you want to get your like really silly questions in, now would be a great opportunity, actually. Just throw that out there. What else? What else should we talk about internally here? I guess it's kind of hard to talk. I'm always interested, like, what people are excited for, but since we're always a chapter or so ahead, it's kind of hard to do without spoilers.
Yeah, I guess I will say here, we are on our new schedule of posting episodes, so Chapter 8 is, like, it's good to go. We're excited to start releasing Chapter 8 starting immediately next month, and on the 1-a-month schedule through then, and knock on wood, hopefully Chapter 9 will be ready to go right after that. That timeline will be a little tighter, but I think we can achieve it. So I'm excited for that. From the chat, the live chat, when we wrote Jen stealing the statue, did we already have firm ideas regarding how it would come into play, or was it just something fun we figured would be useful eventually when we needed it?
Yeah, I think I just I knew like, oh, there's a good MacGuffin that we can use. And like, let me remember to actually use this one sooner rather than later instead of the elf medicine that everybody forgot about.
I think we knew well enough that it was going to be a problem. The specific nature of the problem or how they would use it was left to be seen, but we were definitely like, okay, this is going to throw a wrench in the works somehow, and this will give us a hook for later on.
Right, that this is like too valuable to the point that it's dangerous.
We got a question, what did Brennan think was happening between Arlene and Gwen?
He just didn't know.
It's a great question. I mean, like, I think to some extent there's some plausible cover. Like, I think that, a lady and her handmaiden would have just spent a lot of time together, and like, it actually, like, I think at some points in medieval history it would not even have seemed necessarily sexual for them to share a bed. It's like literally just like body warmth. So I think there is some plausible cover there, but yeah, I think Brennan is maybe also just a little unusually closed off to matters of the heart.
Little insensitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If Antonin is Batman Hamlet, can he get a Robin? Again, not foreclosed to the idea of him getting a Robin. I can't lie and say we have specific plans up to this point, but yeah, maybe.
Although, is his role as Batman disappearing now that he's sort of gone legit again?
Now that he's alive. Unless it needs to come back.
That would be interesting.
Or unless he needs to, like, be the legitimate version, and then he has to, like, get a Robin to be the spirit of vengeance in kind of a good ghost, bad ghost scenario. Good king, bad ghost.
That's kind of funny. I don't even know if we have a character who the Robin could be, other than the High Priest, which would be the funniest Robin imaginable.
Or Dave.
I was just going to say. There you go. That's how you bring him back.
That would be pretty hilarious. Dave is so funny.
Dave's a good character.
Dave is one of my favorite characters. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, and it's true. We do need to like reveal more of the plot of Duel of Crones or whatever we called it.
Right.
Chad is asking about Jen's preferred pizza chain and whether she and Billy agree or if it's limited by what's around.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's definitely... I don't want to be too much of a pizza snob. Let's see. I think there is, where they live, there's an actually, like, a good, like, mom and pop pizza
Local
chain. Or not chain, but, like, a good pizza place that is struggling. We've established they have a Domino's.
Does Wawa go that far north? I know it's not a pizza place, but Pennsylvania people love their Wawa.
Yeah, but can you get pizza? I don't know if even like Wawa stands say the pizza is good at Wawa. You know what I mean? Like, it's mostly the sandwiches. Yeah.
Yeah, but would Billy be like, why bother getting pizza when you can get a Wawa sandwich?
Yeah, but everybody wants pizza sometimes.
That's true. It's a universal fact. Oh,
We've established that Domino's is there, right? And is Domino, like... Okay, this has nothing to do with anything, but I think that bad pizza is its own genre of food.
I'm 100% on this boat, too.
Like, sometimes you want pizza, and then sometimes you want bad pizza, which includes, like, Domino's, Pizza Hut, Papa John's. And of those, Of those, I think Domino's is the best. Like, all considered, like, we know the dark forces that control Papa John's. We don't yet know the dark forces that control Domino's, and it is better than Pizza Hut.
Yeah, I mean, issues aside, that garlic sauce is really good. I kind of like the garlic sauce.
The garlic sauce, the garlic sauce is good.
Now we're just talking about pizza. We're no longer talking about the podcast.
Maybe that's the argument. Maybe before they went to Jordan, maybe that Billy is like, Papa John's is better, and Jen is like, yeah, but you can't, like, the CEO said the N-word in a diversity call, like, we can't get Papa John's, and like that's the disagreement.
And Goya beans, they're not buying any Goya.
Had this come to light at the time that, like, it is canonically in the show?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the show started... Yeah, that is I think about that all the time. Because, like, canonically...
in the real world before
they
transported?
Canonically...
Where they were?
Right, they left our world in, like, 2012.
A lot has changed.
Yeah.
A lot has changed.
Yeah. They left our world in Obama's first term. And I don't know if because like a month or two have passed in plot time. We talk about this all the time. So
is that right? Only a couple months?
Yeah, it's only a couple months. Somebody made a timeline. They shared it with me on Reddit. There's like a fandom wiki that includes a timeline of everything that happened. Yeah, and it's like a month or two. Yeah, all of them should be saying YOLO. Thank you, chat. Yeah, no, totally. It is technically a period piece.
Chat also mentions about whether there's pizza in Jordan or if introducing pizza is how Billy shatters space-time. I will say, I don't want to spoil too much, but we were writing a scene for Chapter 9 with some introductions of new foods, and it is one of the most fun scenes we've had.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is there can't be pizza yet east of the mountains because we've tried to limit east of the mountains to old world crops, so there's no tomatoes there, so there's no marinara sauce. There is a scene in Chapter 9 about introducing some quote new world crops into the story. Let's see. Okay, we've talked about pizza for too long. There's actually a lot of good questions. There's a more serious question
if we want to talk about who in the party is Yelloween closest to, because everyone else is kind of doing their found family thing, and he's just kind of there. I think that's a really interesting question, because I think we... Another thing that we sort of struggled with was sort of how to handle Yelloween's contriteness at the early stages of book 2. I think prior to that, it probably would have been Brennan.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah. And I think he still has the... Sorry, I got to stop reading chat for a moment so I can pay attention to the question. I all of them are really into How I Met Your Mother. Fuck. What a time. What was the fucking question?
Yelloween, who he's close with.
Oh, yeah. Right. So he definitely had, he spent the most time with Brennan before the plot started, so I think there's a kinship there. I think maybe now, I think the way Nia is, she's just kind of a very loving person, and so I think there may be a sort of, gravitating towards Nia just as a matter of, this is the person who's going to be nicest to me right now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Yellowwing is a little bit isolated just at this moment in the plot.
Yeah, and he definitely became more isolated after the whole, like, getting chased out of the camp and then getting chased away from home. And he's probably, if the plot pacing is so fast-paced that sometimes there's not enough time to sort of dive into these things, but he's probably due for some, like, you know, character development or relationship development focused episodes.
Yeah, for sure. There's a music question in chat, so you know I need to jump on that.
Yeah, what kind of music does Jen have on her iPhone? And can she still use the camera and flashlight and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, she can definitely use, as long as she's got battery, which she now is a battery. She definitely can use like the other, like the tool functions of the iPhone. I know, yeah, she's definitely got like a few of the best pop hits of 2012, for sure. I think she's also like, she's got the like pump up mix for the football games. Like, it's the type of thing where like she gives somebody her phone and they plug it into the PA, and that's the like pep rally mix. So there's definitely some like jock jams and like arena butt rock on there. And she also definitely, there's her dad's tape that, like, so her dad gave her left her a cassette when she was very young at some, like, I'm realizing now that she has entirely passed, like, she aged entirely past the CD age. So I think at some point she had the tape like digitized, and that's now on her phone, and it sounds like dog shit because it's a cassette tape, you know, ripped to 128 kilobit per second MP3, but that's like her dad's music that she has.
And I think, well, because she hadn't listened to it for a while, right? It took her a while to actually listen to it.
That's right.
But I kind of imagine that she has, like, other music that she was just exposed to from her dad that, like, not that specific mixtape, but she has, like, a classic rock streak.
Yeah, she probably does. That, and there's definitely, yeah, there's some AC/DC on the pump up mix.
I'm now.
But yeah,
Sorry,
I think Kat's list is also like, yep, Taylor Swift, Lana Del Rey, Justin Bieber, Kesha, Lorde, Carly Rae Jepsen. It's all on there. All the hits of 2012.
I now kind of really want to see like a mini series that's like almost like a game show that's Billy and Jen playing our music for Brennan and Yellowwing, and then just having Nelson sitting on the sides making wisecracks.
Yeah,
like,
that's an expensive show, though, unfortunately.
I don't mean to actually make it. I mean just to imagine it.
No, it's good. Yeah, it's good to imagine.
Like, what would cause the biggest reaction from Brennan? Like, play Brennan some Dragon Force or something?
He'd probably dig it.
Yeah. It's occurring to me that we have established some parallels between, like, elf pop music and, like, our pop music. So it's conceivable, at least, that Yellowwing, like, he has had the experience of not liking the same music as his sister. So I think maybe, like, arguing about pop music is maybe more it's less alien to Yellowwing than it is to Brennan.
That makes sense. But they wouldn't have, so I guess on the Yordic side of the mountains, they wouldn't have audio recordings. It would all be live performances. But on First Snow's side, if they have telegraphs, audio recordings not that far off.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is an entertaining line of questions. Thank you for asking this. I like this. We're now approaching an hour of stream time, so I think it might be about time to wrap us up. Garrett, do you have any last thoughts you want to close on? Anything about this chapter, or the upcoming chapters, without spoiling too much?
I'm afraid to say anything. I thank you all for listening. It's awesome that this show has an audience, because without an audience, it's not a show. So it's really awesome, and thank you guys. And thank you guys for having me on here. And I'm sorry again that I was late, but I'm always honored to be a part of this thing. It's really been. I mean, I was just thinking, we're talking about 2012. My 10-year-old daughter probably you saw walk by. She was born when this thing started. So.
Oh wow!
It's been awesome to be doing this with you guys for so long.
Yeah. Every time I start to lose track of how long we've been doing this and how intimidating it is, I always think about, how old is Garrett's kid?
She's 10. It's a milestone, it's a yard marker for sure.
Yeah. No, we're coming up on 9 years of releasing episodes this September.
It's awesome.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is wild.
Do you have anything, Garrett, that you want to plug? Any other projects going on you want to talk about while you're here?
No, not right now. I'm good. Thank you
Awesome.
for asking, though. I appreciate it.
Christian, do you have anything you want to plug? Any shows you've been listening to that you really like that you want to mention?
Woof, a doofa.
I didn't mean to spring that on you at the last minute. I'm sorry.
Where do I want to? Hang on. Overcast.fm. What is my podcast list? Who do I want to plug? I've been listening to a medieval history podcast called We're Not So Different, which is really, it's kind of it's mostly a medieval history podcast with someone who has a PhD in that sort of thing. But it's also what's it called? They just spent 25 episodes, so half a year, kind of doing the entire history of the world through the lens of historical materialism. So it's a left-leaning history podcast, which has been I never really dived into that from a history perspective. So that's been cool. Yeah, check that out, because I think a lot of people who listen to our show are definitely interested in someone who knows what they're talking about the Middle Ages. So that's my plug. And then we're coming back. We'll have
Oh yes.
We have minisodes. So if you're watching the live stream, we have minisodes coming this coming Sunday, the 15th of May. If you're listening to this as the podcast, that will have already passed. But then we have Chapter 8 premiering on June 26th. And the stuff we got coming up, I'm really, really excited for it.
There's some very exciting things coming up. So as Garrett said earlier, thank you, all of our listeners. It's so sort of indescribable that you're all sticking here with us. And I'm so happy you're here. And I'm excited for you all to hear what's coming up next. It's really... the stories, I think we're still improving as we go, and I'm very excited to release the next episodes. And with that, I think that wraps up the Ask the Once and Future Nerd for Book 2, Chapter 7. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy Chapter 8 upcoming, and we'll talk to you for the Q&A session at the end of Chapter 8.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Stream is ended.